ini bertuahnya kita di Malaysia hari ini kerana kita bersama dengan dua orang aktivis yang telah pun ke merata dunia untuk menyuarakan pendapat mereka. Mereka ini merupakan orang-orang yang cukup kuat semangat mereka, yang bersuara mengenai isu-isu, termasuklah isu-isu pencerobohan di Iraq, Afghanistan dan juga Palestin. Kita bersama dengan Profesor Achin Vanaik dan juga Reverend Dr Stephen Sizer. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for being with us. It's a pleasure to have both of you here on the show today. So, you have been here to speak about issues that are very controversial, probably very, very close to you. And probably my first question would be, why? Why have you chosen to speak about issues of such? What triggered you, actually? There must be something, a point of your life where you were minding your own business and something happened and say, my God, I need to do my part and play my part. As a non-Muslim, this would probably give a different perspective because people would usually relate to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as an issue of Muslims. Perhaps, Doctor, you would like to start
For me personally, as someone from Britain, I became aware about 15, 20 years ago of Britain's involvement in the Middle East. It was part of our empire, and we created many of the tensions that exist today by the way we drew lines on the borders.
Yes.
And having visited the Holy Land and experienced the suffering of the Palestinian people...
When was that?
In the mid-80s. For the last 20 years I've been travelling regularly, realising that they are suffering at a very deep and profound level because they are suffering the consequences of the way the Europeans treated the Jews a generation earlier.
Okay, does the Europeans realise this?
I was not so aware until I'd visited the land and realised it's not just a Muslim issue, it's a Christian issue too. 10% of the Palestinians are Christians, and the Jews are suffering as well through the occupation and through land confiscation, house demolitions happening on a daily basis.
Yeah, we understand that, but not many people are willing to go and do things that probably perhaps you two are doing. What about yourself?
Well, I was in England for about 13 years and I experienced racism. So my first experience was to oppose racism.
I see.
And Zionism is a form of racism in its own way. And when I tried to understand why racism, then that was connected to colonialism. And this is the longest running struggle for independence by any people. And if you're just an ordinary human being, you're going to feel great empathy with people who are suffering. And the injustice that is done to the Palestinians is absolutely incredible.
Do you, well, you know, we all, or perhaps maybe in Malaysia especially, you know, we understand that the Palestinians are suffering gravely, deeply, but many feel really hopeless and helpless. What would you say?
It's very easy. It's very easy. I give presentations to teenagers and I explain there's some homework and they, oh, cringe. But the homework is you're going to have to solve this because your parents have screwed up. You're going to have to solve this.
Oh, my God.
And they realise it's not a theoretical issue. They've got to deal with it. Let me give you an illustration. Imagine you're a child, you go to visit your grandmother, and she says, take a sweet, and you put your hand in the jar and you grab 3 sweets. And you can't get your hand out of the jar.
Yes.
You got your hand stuck.
Yeah.
Israel will never enjoy peace and security with its neighbours until it deals... until the Palestinians have justice. It's got its hand caught in the jar, and Israel wants 3 things. It wants to be a democracy, it wants the West Bank, it wants the land, and it wants to be a Jewish state. It can only have 2, it can't have 3. If it gives up the West Bank, international law, it can become a Jewish democracy, allow the Palestinians their own land. If it won't give up the land, it must give up being a Jewish state. Like Malaysia, allow everyone, one man, one vote. Everyone is an equal citizen. But if it won't give up being a Jewish state, it must recognise it's not a democracy, it's an apartheid state. So it's got to give up one of those 3, either 2-state solution, give up the West Bank, 1-state solution, give up being a Jewish state, or recognise it's a no-state solution. It's a lose-lose because it won't recognise that its occupations are legal.
Will they actually choose?
As soon as America turns off the dollar tap, we'll see a change. And
will that happen?
It will eventually happen because sooner or later America will figure it doesn't need this special relationship with Israel. It needs a multilateral solution and it needs a good relationship with the rest of the world.
Okay, Prof, maybe you'd like to elaborate on what Doctor has said.
You said, what gives us confidence? Well, just look at history. In history, you have two kinds of struggles. You have people who are always struggling for power, and you have people who are struggling for decency and justice.
Yes, that's right.
And in history, weaker countries, weaker peoples have defeated those that seem much stronger.
I love that. Yes.
Look at what's happened with regard to the end of colonialism.
Yes.
Look at what's happened with regard to the end of apartheid.
And communism.
And the fall of the Soviet bloc. So if you look at that, there's every reason to be confident. And when you have a struggle that is so morally pure, you have great strength. You know what Nelson Mandela said when he was asked, at what point did you realize that apartheid is going to be defeated?
Yes.
You know what his answer was? His answer was, we realized that apartheid is going to be defeated when we realized that we had captured the moral imagination of enough people. He did not say everybody.
Yes.
He didn't say even a majority. He said, when we have captured the moral imagination of enough people. And believe me, what we are seeing today with regard to Palestine and the kind of support it's getting in civil society everywhere,
that's right.
more and more people are recognizing the moral integrity and the justice of the Palestinian cause. And that gives us a lot of optimism for the future.
All right, both of you, you're going to have a talk tonight at Club Golf Perkhidmatan Awam, which is KGPA, at around 8 tonight?
Yes.
Okay. Then mention the time here. So you have been here, you've been speaking in universities, and you have another talk tomorrow at the International Institute of Advanced Islamic Studies, and also the Malay College or All Boys Association in Jalan Said, Kuala Lumpur. What are the important things that you would really like to emphasize at every talk, probably at every talk you go? What are the key points that you want people to understand? Say today, in this short discussion that we have, what is the takeaway message that you would like to give to Malaysians out there, especially to the non-Muslims, to the Indians, to the Chinese, to the Christians out there watching? Please come and listen to you guys for a much longer session. We have a very limited time here. Maybe would you like to comment on that?
Our hope is that people will recognize that we can do something. We can't wash our hands and say this is a problem far away. This is the most dangerous military conflict in the world. Chemical, biological, nuclear weapons loose in Palestine tonight. It's the most, or today, it's the most controversial conflict in the world. Brings Jews, Christians and Muslims into tension and conflict. It will have a regional effect, it will have a global effect if it goes wrong. So we have a responsibility to get behind the international community, United Nations, and pressure Israel to compromise land for peace. It wants peace and security with its neighbors, but the best defense is a good neighbor. You found that in the Far East. The best defense is a good neighbor. Israel needs good neighbors, and they long to be good neighbors, but they must allow the Palestinians the same rights they enjoy, the right of independence, sovereignty, and security for the future. That's our hope.
That ordinary people can do a great deal in civil society. The messages, one is that you have to work towards isolating and weakening the big protector of Israel, which is the United States, and that this can be done.
Isn't that hard to do?
Not so difficult. Look, not so difficult. If you look at, again, a question of history, you've seen that. Do you know that the United States had a defense agreement with apartheid South Africa, right? It was defeated there. And there are lots of things that ordinary people can do. And that's one of the things that we're going to be taking. We're going to take suggestions about what can be done in various ways to win public opinion, because in the long term that is very, very important.
Getting behind the flotilla is a fantastic way people here in Malaysia can help. Getting relief supplies into Gaza, breaking the siege. It embarrasses America and it embarrasses Israel. The ordinary human beings are willing to risk their lives to sail supplies into Gaza. We saw what happened to the Turkish flotilla. Coming up very soon, there'll be a much larger flotilla. There'll be an American ship. There'll be European ships in that group and from the Far East. So we're really excited about what we can do together.
And we'll also be asking people to fight in their own countries against their own governments having, say, military relationships with Israel, to push them to isolate. The Malaysian government has a good position on Palestine, which should be emulated by a number of other governments. And I think it's very important to also get across the message that, you know, it's a simple question of justice. You don't have to be Muslim or Palestinian to see the justice of the Palestinian cause. You don't have to be black to see the justice of fighting against apartheid. You don't have to be Vietnamese to see the justice of fighting for Vietnam against the American assault. So these are common elementary things, and this is expression of our own basic humanity when we align ourselves with a struggle for justice in Palestine.
Thank you so much for the struggles that you guys have been going through. Just a short, would like you to elaborate more on what you're going to talk about tonight, probably.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to be looking at the roots of the conflict in the Middle East and showing that the conflict was set up as part of the British Empire, its expansion in the Middle East. Britain wants to control Palestine, Jordan, Iraq. That was part of our empire. We promised the land to the Jewish people. We promised to protect the Arabs, and we did neither. And in the end, Britain tried to get out of Palestine and allow the Arabs and the Jews to fight over it themselves.
So you're going to go back to history tonight,
But we're also going to look at the consequences today and how America is perpetuating that conflict by one-sided support for Israel. It's very important in September that Malaysia and other countries gets behind the United Nations in recognizing Palestine as an independent state. Then we can move forward and treat both Jews and Arabs, Jews and Palestinians the same, rather than preferring one against the other.
Yes, exactly. And yourself, Prof?
Yeah, I'll be talking a great deal about the present situation. And look at the impact of the Arab Spring. That's been a very important development. After many years, you've had the Rafah crossing, which was part of the siege of the Gaza, now opened. You also have a coming together of Hamas and Fatah. Now, these are all positive developments which are indicating that we can certainly move forward. So these are also things that we're going to talk about.
Alright, jadi pada mereka yang di luar sana, jangan lupa untuk bersama-sama dengan dua orang speaker kita pada malam ini di KJPA. Prepared for a large crowd tonight, hopefully. Dan juga besok pada 6 hari bulan 6 dan 7 hari bulan 6 di International Institute of Advanced Islamic Studies Jalan Off Jalan University. Kita dengarkan pandangan kedua-dua orang aktivis ini. This is the CD. We can get this tonight?
Books, yes, they are. My books are available on Amazon and bookshops.
All right.
Thank you.
We look forward to hear from you tonight. Thank you very much for coming. Jangan lupa malam ini jam 8 malam di KJPA. Kita berehat sebentar, kembali lagi selepas ini.